Hello everyone and welcome to my birth story. I can't believe we're finally sharing the birth story after the pregnancy felt like it lasted for 10 years. This is Darcy. She's a bit she's a bit milk drunk at the moment. I'm not sure whether she's going to sleep or whether she's going to grizzle or be awake or who knows, but my boy's out of the house and I thought it's now or never. Let's give it a go. Are you going to play ball? Anyway, so this is Darcy. She is 2.5 weeks old. Are you going to be happy or are you going to be windy? She's 2.5 weeks old. She has just discovered how to feed properly, how to feed efficiently as she's going for it. I feel like all I'm doing night and day is feed this child. But that's what I'm here for, right? Such is the life of a newborn. Feed, sleep, poo, repeat. So anyway, let's give it a go and see if she allows me to get through this whole story. So 2.5 weeks ago, I was 39 plus 4 days. 39 weeks plus 4 days. I've been having on and off contractions, cramps for like 2 to 3 weeks. I was honestly exhausted and felt like I was going into labour at any day. So much so that actually on the day of going into labour, I didn't really believe it was happening because I was like, these contractions have been coming and going for so long now. Who's to say this is even the thing? I went in for a scan at 37 weeks, a growth scan, because my bump was showing up small, funnily enough, because in this scan, it showed that one, she was measuring quite big, and two, I had excess fluid around the baby, amniotic fluid. And so I was sent to a consultant who said, let's try and figure out why this is here. Often it's the result of having gestational diabetes. So I was sent home with a testing kit to test my blood sugars through a finger prick after every meal for 7 days. And it sent me into a bit of a spiral because it'd been quite a smooth pregnancy on paper all the way through. And this was such a spanner in the works that I really wasn't expecting. And it threw me. I lost my confidence. I was genuinely feeling quite confident to give birth and stuff, and I just lost it all. But for that week, I didn't get one single positive result in the, or negative, whichever way you want to look at it, in the diabetes test. So it showed up that I did not have diabetes. So that was really good. And then I went back and I saw a lovely, lovely consultant who said to me, okay, so you don't have diabetes. Her head is engaged in your pelvis, and if it stays that way, we're not worried. Sometimes women can just have excess fluid by the end. That's just for no reason. So she checked and her head was secure in the pelvis. It wasn't moving at all. So she said, as long as it stays like that, which it should, we're not concerned. You can still aim for your water birth that you want, and nothing should change. We might just have to monitor you a bit closer just to check everything's fine. So she filled me with a lot more confidence. She also said, are you uncomfortable? I was like, yes, I can barely walk. My pelvis is so sore. My bump feels like it's going to explode. It's so tight. She said, yeah, you've got a lot of extra water in there. No wonder you're feeling uncomfortable, which verified my feelings quite a lot. Excuse me. So she suggested that she give me a sweep to see if we could sort of hurry things along a little bit. And I was all for that. Have you got wind? I was all for that. So she gave me a sweep, which was my first one. It was not the most lovely experience, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. It was uncomfortable rather than painful, I'd say, and it was over and done with in a couple of seconds. So I went home feeling very positive that, we were doing things to progress this pregnancy. Do you want to lie down? Why don't you go here? Anyway, nothing came of that sweep. I had the contractions I'd been having for 2 weeks. They kept on going, and that was it. So nothing happened from that sweep. So at 39 weeks, I went to see my midwife, and as instructed by the consultant, she also gave me a sweep. Is that better? She also gave me a sweep, and she said I was 2 centimetres dilated. So I was thrilled about that because I was 1 centimetre the week before. You could feel the baby's head and you know, it was all looking really good. That was exciting. Hey, my darling, do you want some more milk? Okay. So she said she thought that things were progressing. So even if the sweeps weren't putting me into labour, they were definitely helping to get my body ready, which felt really good and sort of productive, you know. Anyway, I got home from that sweep and part of my mucus plug came loose, which was very exciting. That didn't happen at all with the boys. I never saw it. So that was really exciting and got me feeling, you know, like, is this it? Could this be it? And I had about 2 hours of really strong contraction cramps and I was getting really excited, and then it just all stopped and went back to what it was before. So anyway, 2 days later, I went back for my final sweep, and in this sweep, she said she could stretch me to 3 centimetres, and she said my waters were bulging. She was trying not to nick them as she was doing the sweep, and I was like, oh no, nick it, that'll be good. But she said, no, let it do its thing by itself. So I went home after that one. More of the mucus plug came loose, which was good. I went on a walk with my boys after nursery. They went on their scooters and I went on a walk, and I was thinking, these cramps they're really coming now. They're quite consistent. They're quite intense. I didn't say anything to anyone, not even George, because I knew he would suddenly go into action stations, and I was thinking, no, we've got to get the kids to bed. That, you know, we've got to do that. So did the normal bedtime routine, fed them their dinner, bath, I think, even bedtime. And when I put them to bed, I went back in for an extra kiss with both of them, because I just had that feeling that tonight something big is going to happen. And I just got a bit emotional, and you know, I think my body was like, this is it. Put them to bed, they went to sleep. We had some dinner, we had fajitas, and I ended up having a chocolate Magnum ice cream afterwards, thinking I might need some energy tonight, let's just get the calories in. And then I started timing these contractions. I still didn't really tell George how much I thought it was going to happen. I alluded to it, but I just sort of kept him calm. I was timing them, and they were between 6 and 10 minutes apart, but they were regularly between those two. And it was fine. I could talk through them, but they were there for sure. So I text my mum and I text my neighbour, because our plan was that our neighbour would come over straight away whilst my mum would drive over, and she lives an hour away. And that's what the plan was going to be if it happened in the night. So I text them both to sort of warn them that, like, I'm thinking something might happen. And then an hour later, I knew something was happening. These contractions were getting closer together. I was having to breathe through them. They were the real deal now. I rang up the midwife centre, the birthing centre, and I said to them, look, I know it's crazy because I'm talking to you and I feel fine, but in my last birth, things progressed really quickly. So I don't feel that comfortable staying at home, because I just don't know how fast we're going to get to the pushing stage. And I don't want to give birth at home, and I don't want to give birth in the car. So she said, look, why don't you just come in? So hung up the phone, called everyone, action stations, and got our stuff together. Of course, we had packed the hospital bag, but there was loads of stuff that was just like in piles and lists of things to put in on the day. Sorted all that out, and my lovely neighbour came over. You're going to give birth, oh my God, so exciting. She was like, go, go, go. So off we went in the car, and we got there really quick, because it was, by this point, it was 10:30 in the evening. No one on the roads, no one in the hospital car park, which is so unlike the hospital. Usually it takes us forever to find a parking space. So that is the plus side of going into labour at night. The downside is I was so tired. I was so ready for bed. I was desperate to give birth all the time, apart from at bedtime. I was just like, I need my sleep. So I was a bit annoyed that things were kicking off at bedtime. Anyway, whatever. Got into the hospital, walked one way that we thought was a shortcut. Door was locked, couldn't get in that way, so I had to go all the way around the hospital. And by this point, I was having to stop walking when a contraction was coming. It was still very manageable, and I could have kept on walking, but I stopped to breathe through it. So we had a couple on the way up to the midwife unit. And when we got there, lovely midwife greeted us and she said, come on in, let's have a baby. I was like, oh, okay, let's go have a baby. Because from my notes and from what I'd said, it sounded like I was going to get in, the baby was going to be out in the next hour. And that's really what I thought was going to happen. So I thought, fantastic, let's go have a baby. Got into a lovely room that was all, dimly lit and everything. There was a pool of water that she'd started running. So I was thrilled, because the worry is that all the pools are busy, aren't they? So, I was just worried that I wasn't going to get to even try the water. She started running the water and then she did an examination. And she told me I was only 2 centimetres dilated, which I could not believe. I was like, I've been 2 centimetres for 2 weeks now. This feels so different. How can it be 2? And I was like, please don't send me home. She was like, no, we're not sending you home because we just don't know how your body dilates very quickly. We don't want to risk you not making it back in. So she left us in this lovely room, a different room actually. We had to move rooms. Because of my excess fluid, I had to be monitored. If I wanted to go in the water, I needed this wireless monitor, and they only had one, and it was in a different room. So we went to another room, and I was so happy about it because, one, there was a pool in that room still, and 2, it was much cooler. The first room was absolutely boiling. Like, why do all hospital rooms have to be like saunas? This one had loads of windows, and we had them open, and it was so nice. Actually, a bit cold at one stage. We had to close the windows, but God, labour is hot work. You just don't want to be in a hot room, do you? So anyway, we're in this room, and they basically left us in there to labour away by ourselves. They came in once every hour to listen to baby's heartbeat and ask me if I was all right. And we had a buzzer so we could call them. I asked for some paracetamol at one point, had some paracetamol, and I have to say it did take the edge off the contractions for sure. But I was just pacing the room. I didn't want to really sit down. I lay down for a few rests in between the contractions, but it slowed things down. Every time I lay down, I noticed, because I was still timing my contractions, I noticed that I'd get a much longer break in between contractions, which, don't get me wrong, was nice, and I needed the break at some points, but I wanted to just progress things. I didn't want anything to slow me down or slow it down, so I just kept standing up, walking, and poor George was like in this chair having mini power naps in between each contraction, and then I would be like, another one, because I needed him to like rub my lower back. And to be honest, it wasn't the rubbing of my back that was really helpful. It was the fact that he was close to me. I think when you're having contractions and they start to really ramp up, it can feel quite frightening and quite just quite scary, because they're painful and they're hard. And when he was next to me, I felt like we were doing them together. So the poor guy did not get any sleep, which he was hoping he might do. So I was labouring, and I was actually managing them really well through my breathing. The paracetamol took the edge off. Once that started to wear off, I rang the buzzer and I said, what can I have now? And she said, we could give you pethidine, but then you wouldn't be able to go in the water for 4 hours afterwards. And I just thought, I think I'm closer than 4 hours. Are you finished? I think I'm closer than 4 hours, and I didn't want anything to jeopardise my chance of being able to get into the water. So I said no to the pethidine, and I just thought I'm going to power on through, because I know how wonderful it felt to be in the water last time, and I really wanted to do that again. So I said no to the pethidine, which was hard because I was really desperate for some extra pain relief, but I knew what I wanted in the end. You're all right. Hello. So we started in there at about 11 something, and this was about 3. So I said I thought I was closer than 4 hours, and about at 4 a.m. suddenly something ramped up, and even George noticed. He was like, these contractions are getting more intense, aren't they? I was like, yes. Rang the buzzer, got the midwife to come in, and I said, I need to get in this water. They didn't want me to get in any earlier because they said it might slow things down, which I understood. But I said, I need to get in there now. I think things are close. Like, I really need to get in. One lovely midwife said, yep, she could just tell by how I was looking and how I was talking, she's ready to push, or she's getting there. She started running the water, and this other midwife, an older lady, came in and demanded that she examined me. And I just said, are you sure? Like, can't you tell? I'm in the next phase, like I'm totally ready. to get this baby out. Like, you don't need to examine me, please. Anyway, she was adamant. She was adamant to examine me. And in the end, I just gave in because I thought, I need to get in the water. And if this is the way she's going to let me get in, then fine. Got on the bed. I kept having a contraction, so I kept having to get off the bed again and back on. So eventually I stayed there. She examined me, and to nobody's surprise, I was 9.5 centimetres or whatever. So I jumped off the bed, another contraction was coming, and this contraction broke my waters. I felt like it was like a big water balloon I felt like I was pushing, and I popped the waters. It felt very much like it was me doing it. And my gosh, there was a lot of water all over the floor, all over George's shoes. There was a big feeling of relief for me, because suddenly my bump got less tight. It felt like there was suddenly physical relief, but in the same breath, the intensity of the contractions went through the roof. I went from having like a proper break in between contractions to hardly 10 seconds. It felt like I was just continually contracting after that. So I clambered into the pool, and my body was shaking at this stage. I think the adrenaline was just going mad in my body. I was shaking. I was having to really control my breathing because it was getting quite erratic. But the water felt amazing to get in. I was so happy I finally got in. It's just, my body just melted into it, and it really did act as a pain relief. And I know that before I ever had a water birth, I couldn't understand what people meant. Like, yeah, it's nice to get in a bath, but surely that's not going to do much. It is so magical. So I got in there, got myself into an all-fours position, which felt right. I was holding George's hands over the pool. He was sort of crouched down on like a little stool on the other side. And it was about 10 minutes in there of the regular contractions I was having. And then suddenly I felt my body start pushing. So I checked with the midwife, is it okay if I start pushing? And she just said, go with what your body's telling you to do. And I was like, okay, great. So I had a couple of contractions where I was being quite silent in my contractions before then, breathing but not making any noises. And suddenly, here the noises came. I felt like I was having to actually work with the contractions now. So a couple of really big pushing contractions, and I actually started hallucinating. I was like, oh, I think the head's coming out. The midwife was like, no, it's not. So I was like, oh God, okay. And at this point, George had been holding this mini fan on my face, and it was just so nice. It was heaven having that cold air blowing on me. Suddenly the fan was nowhere to be seen, and I was asking him, where's the fan? And he sounded so scared to tell me, but he was like, it's run out of battery. I was livid. I couldn't believe it. I'd been charging that fan for days, and I think what had happened was it had been on in the bag. I was really cross with myself and the fan. And so, bless George, in between contractions, you'd see him running over to plug it in for 30 seconds and then bring it back, and then plug it in and then bring it back. So he was doing that. And in between contractions, I was just had my eyes closed. I was breathing, I was recovering from the contraction, and I just stayed really in the zone, really, really in the zone. So then started coming the head. The midwife said, I can see the head. And I was like, thank God, finally. And that horrible thing happened that happened in my last birth. It happens in every birth, but I didn't feel it in my first because I had an epidural. So I felt it with Barney, where the head almost comes out and then the contraction ends and then it goes back in. And it's so demoralising because you think, you've nearly done it, and then it goes back in. But the midwife assured me that that needs to happen so that the baby can come round the bend and your body can stretch slowly rather than tear. So that was fine. I knew it had to happen, but ouch. So the head came back in, and then the next contraction, the head pushed right down, and then she was saying, oh, it hasn't gone back this time. So it just stayed there when the contraction ended. It was just waiting there. So I felt very pleased about that. And then the next contraction, was it the next one or the one after? It was either one or two more. The head came out, and the relief when the head comes out, because you think that's the biggest bit. Oh my God, that's the biggest bit. And then after the head came out, I had to do an extra mini push afterwards because she said the chin wasn't quite out. I had to do a little extra push. But George then looked over and was like, oh my God, I can see loads of hair. And at this point, I was listening, but I wasn't talking. I was just recovering. But the contraction didn't come for ages after that. It felt like I had about a 10-minute break with her head just chilling out in between my legs. So that was weird. So by the time the next contraction came, I had really recovered. I think we were having a conversation. Then suddenly the contraction started and one big push and her body came out and she was passed through my legs to me and I picked her up, and like with Barney in the water, she just felt really warm and slippery. And I put her straight on my chest and the adrenaline went crazy in my body. I was like for a good 5 minutes after she was born, and I was just hugging her going, oh my God, you're here, my God, oh my God. And it wasn't for probably 2 minutes that I then thought, can we just check she's definitely a she, because we hadn't checked. And we looked and all the midwives went, yay, because the whole way through the birth I was saying, should we have a boy's name ready? Like, are we really sure she's a girl? I just couldn't quite believe we wouldn't have a boy since that's all we'd ever known. Anyway, she's a girl. But she came out very purple. She looked really purple. Her eyes were wide open and she was looking around, but she wasn't making any noise. And now Barney didn't make any noise either, but he started going pink a bit quicker than she did. And I was quite chilled because she was definitely alive. She was definitely breathing. Her eyes were looking around, but they started panicking. There was 2 midwives in there. They called another one in. They were patting her on the back really hard, rubbing her tummy, like really going for it. And then they said, oh, I think we're going to have to cut the cord and take her off just to give her a bit of help. So I was like, oh God, okay. And as soon as they were about to do that, it's like she was like, okay, fine. She made a little squeak, and it wasn't a cry. It was just a and that's all they needed to hear. They were so happy with that. And then she started going a bit pink. I got her on my skin. She started to go less purple. She looked very shell-shocked when she came out, and they just said because the pushing bit was really quick, they come out really shocked. So it made loads of sense, but it was quite scary. And even though it was probably about 3 minutes, it felt like 20. So cuddled her in the water, and I was just so relieved she was here. She looked really like Barney. She was very swollen. Like, I'll talk about this in a minute, but she was very, very swollen. And I only really realised that now that we've seen her sort of change over the next 24 hours. But she was very swollen. And with Barney's birth, my last baby, I could sit holding him in the water for ages, and it wasn't until they wanted me to deliver the placenta that I had to do it. With this one, she said, look, I'll give you like half an hour if you just want to sit there, keep the cord attached, whatever. And I was like, okay. And then I started to get really, really uncomfortable. Like, I couldn't really sit down properly. I was visually uncomfortable. She was like, are you okay? And I said, I think we need to cut the cord and give her to George because I really can't sit down. Like, I feel very, very sore. And so we did that. George cut the cord. He got her on his skin and had a lovely cuddle. I then said, can I have the injection for the placenta? I just can't push anything else out. My body was just like on strike from pushing. I tried. It's like my brain had lost connection. I couldn't push. And so she gave me the injection and I still couldn't push anything. I couldn't do anything. So I clambered out, got onto the bed, and she basically pulled the placenta out for me. And when it came out, it's like my body was an empty sack. It was just, I felt so empty. And she pulled out the placenta and she was visibly shocked. She was like, oh my God, look how massive it is. It was so big. And if she was shocked, I guess it really was big. She was like, no wonder you were uncomfortable. You had a big-ish baby, you had extra fluid, and you had this massive placenta. So I felt so much better once it was out. I felt like not so sore, but I felt very weak and very sick. And she said the injection can make you feel a bit sick. So I was straight away trying to eat a cereal bar, drink some apple juice, like trying to get some sugar back in me. But it was out, thank goodness. I had a small tear. The tear was a 2nd degree tear, but woo! The tear was 2nd degree tear, but they weren't going to stitch it, and then they thought, okay, let's just do it anyway. So it was a small one. So they stitched me all up, and then I got to cuddle her again, and she latched on straight away, which was so nice, and such a familiar feeling that I'd forgotten. As soon as she started, it was like, oh, remember this feeling. So she latched on, and she fed the colostrum off me for 2 hours. She didn't want to get off the boob, which is mad. And I'd also brought in 2 syringes of colostrum that I'd harvested, and she basically drank it all. She was starving. And even went to suck her thumb afterwards. Like, I think she was just very hungry. And then we got to stay in that room for hours. So she was born at 6 a.m. or 5:57, I think. And we stayed in that room until we came home at 2 p.m. So it was lovely. We didn't have to go to a postnatal ward. We just stayed in there. I had a shower. Oh my God. How nice is that first shower? I mean, it's weird because you're like, I've literally just pushed a baby out and I'm walking across the room, bleeding. My tummy's all flabby. It's weird, but my God, I felt so clean and lovely once I finished that shower. And eaten loads of food. I had pan au chocolats, I had cashew nuts, I had fruit salad. It was so nice. And then we told all our family, and we did a few FaceTimes with parents and things like that. And it was such a special time. And then we went home just in time for my mum to bring the boys back from nursery, and it was emotional. It was so special. They were over the moon to meet their baby sister, just like giddy with excitement. And George and I were crying, and it was really, really special. But coming home from hospital having a baby when you've got kids at home is like crash back down to reality. They asked me to go on a scooter ride straight away. What's for dinner? Can I have a snack? It's straight back to real life. So it was mad. And then they went to bed, and then we just sat and stared at her. One, because she has dark hair. And if you know the boys, you know that one is very blonde and one is ginger. So we just like, what is this? We're collecting the colours of the rainbow here. We've got a brunette one. Although, I don't know if you can see. Let's show you a bit closer up. Hello, sleepy girl. Maybe you can't see on the camera. Underneath her brunette hair is a lot of blonde hair. So I think she's going to actually go blonde. Maybe she'll be like a strawberry blonde. I don't know. Oh, isn't she so sweet? Look at her. Anyway, we just stared at her, and we were just like, we've got a girl, and we've got a brunette girl, and we've got a third baby. Like, all these things, just like, whoa. Then the next day we went to have her 24-hour check, and she was weighed and everything. And she had dropped from 812, she was 812 when she was born, to 710. So she dropped so much weight so quickly. I know that that's a really normal amount of weight to drop, but it was so quick. So she suddenly was a whole pound lighter. And to be honest, I'm no doctor, but it looked to me like she wasn't ever supposed to be that weight when she was born. She looked really uncomfortable, really swollen and puffy, and she suddenly looked comfortable and like normal 24 hours later. So safe to say, it took us 2 whole weeks to get her back up to birth weight, because it was a big climb for her, and the milk hadn't come in yet, and you know, everything was hard for her. She was sleeping a lot and wasn't feeding for long periods of time, whatever. I wasn't worried. She was pooing fine, she was weeing fine, she was going up, she was just doing it slowly. And weirdly now, at 2.5 weeks, she's at her birth weight again, but she looks like a totally different baby. So I just think, I don't know what was going on. She was just very swollen. It's like she had extra fluid in her too. But in terms of recovery, 2.5 weeks in, I feel really good. I felt for the first couple of days the uterus contractions of it going back down were so painful. Everyone says they get worse with each birth, and let me tell you, they are right. I took loads of pain relief for that, which is bizarre since I just had a paracetamol to give birth to her, but I had ibuprofen paracetamol every couple of hours for the post-birth contractions. And I felt a lot of pressure in my bum. That was very sore. And obviously where the stitches were sore when they were recovering. But generally, I feel really good. Considering how uncomfortable I was at the end of the pregnancy, I actually feel great, because now I can move. I don't feel so heavy anymore. And to be honest, I didn't weigh myself the whole pregnancy. I weighed myself right at the very end because I was interested in how much I'd gained in the pregnancy. And then I weighed myself the day I came home. And overnight, giving birth to her, the placenta, the water, the blood, everything, I lost 12 kilos. Overnight. So no wonder I felt great. 12 kilos of pregnancy, and she was only, 3.5. It's bonkers how much weight everything else holds. So yeah, if you are pregnant and you've weighed yourself and you feel demoralized of how heavy you feel or whatever, that's all of it is the pregnancy, okay? Pregnancy is heavy. So yeah, that is my birth story. It's a really positive one. I feel like very lucky that's how it went. Look at her little scrunchy bum. You gorgeous. I think we're going to need another feed now, are we? Oh. Another feed. I feel very, very lucky. I've got 3 wonderful children. I'm blooming shattered, as you can probably tell. I do not look very fresh, but that's what makeup is for. I've not got much, I haven't had much sleep. I've got 3 children. It's chaos, but it's wonderful. Honestly, I feel so happy. The most tired I've ever been, but the most happy I've ever been. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed hearing that story. If you have any questions, if I missed anything out, I can't think straight now, but if I've missed anything crucial, please just ask me. I'm more than happy to share. And yeah, follow me along for this wild ride of having 3 children, if I can ever find time to pick up the camera on the regular basis again. But thank you so much for all your support, as always. Sleepy girl and me are going to enjoy some peace and quiet before the boys come home from nursery, and we will see you very soon.